Welcome to Module 2. In this section, we will delve into one of the most critical concepts of our time, sustainable development. The image you see, a vibrant river delta, is a perfect metaphor for our topic, a complex, interconnected system where land, water, and life are all intertwined. Our module will follow a similar path, tracing the concept of sustainable development from its origin as a defining idea to its current role as a global blueprint for action. We'll explore where this idea came from, what it truly means, and how it has evolved into a comprehensive framework that guides international policy, business strategy, and individual action. Understanding this concept is fundamental as it provides the language and the logic for tackling the profound environmental, social, and economic challenges we face. Before we dive in, let's outline our learning goals for this chapter. By the time we conclude this module, you will have achieved two key objectives. First, you will know the most common and influential definition of sustainable development and understand its basic foundational concept. We will explore the precise wording that has shaped global conversations for over 3 decades and unpack the powerful idea at its core. This is not just about memorizing a definition, it's about grasping the principle of responsibility that it champions. Second, you will become familiar with the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. This is the modern practical application of sustainability theory. We will look at how the broad concept of sustainable development has been translated into a concrete set of 17 actionable goals that serve as a blueprint for global progress. Mastering these 2 points will give you both the foundational theory and the contemporary policy framework necessary to engage meaningfully with the topic of sustainability. Every powerful idea has an origin story, and sustainable development is no exception. Its roots can be traced back to a growing awareness of a fundamental problem. In 1972, a report for the Club of Rome titled The Limits to Growth sent shockwaves through academic and policy circles. For the first time, it clearly described a troubling scenario. A global economy based on exponential growth would inevitably clash with a planet of finite resources, leading to a variety of potential negative outcomes. This report ignited a critical academic debate. The political world took notice. 15 years later, in 1987, the United Nations responded with a landmark report from the Brundtland Commission, officially titled Our Common Future. This document was a direct political reaction to the debate sparked by the limits to growth. It didn't just acknowledge the problem, it offered a new way forward. The Brundtland Report established the cornerstone concept of sustainability, creating a definition and framework that remain profoundly influential. Even today, over 30 years later, and despite the introduction of other frameworks like the Millennium and Sustainable Development Goals, this report is still the foundational text we cite and reference. So, what was the powerful definition put forth in that 1987 Brundtland Report? It states, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Let's take a moment to absorb that. It's elegant in its simplicity, but profound in its implications. It establishes a direct link between our actions today and the well-being of those who will come after us. At its heart, this definition is built on a core principle: intergenerational equity. This is the idea that our generation has a deep responsibility for the consequences of its actions on all subsequent generations. We are not just borrowing from the future, we are stewards of a planet that we must pass on in a healthy state. The report also made it clear that we cannot look at environmental issues in isolation. It stressed that ecological challenges must be considered alongside economic growth and social justice, because all these aspects are deeply interconnected and have a significant impact on one another. This definition truly set the stage for a more holistic understanding of development. The Brundtland Report broadened our perspective, showing us that sustainability is not just about the environment. It's a multifaceted concept with three core dimensions: environment, society, and economy. As the diagram illustrates, these are not separate pillars standing side by side, but are best understood as an interconnected, nested system. The economy exists within society, and both society and the economy exist within the larger environmental system, which provides the resources and life support for everything else. It is essential to see them as a system because ecological, economic, and social challenges are inextricably linked. Consider an environmental problem like a severe drought. This doesn't just impact ecosystems, it can lead to massive social challenges such as refugee flows. Likewise, an ecological disaster like a 5-meter sea level rise would flood major coastal cities, leading to unimaginable economic costs and social upheaval. To make truly effective and sustainable decisions, we must always consider the interrelationships and feedback loops between these three dimensions. Ignoring one dimension inevitably puts the others at risk. To make these three abstract dimensions more concrete, we can think about them in terms of key questions that each one forces us to ask. For the environment, we must ask, for how long will our planet be able to satisfy our needs and wants? And what can we do to improve its resilience? A resilient environment is more stable and better equipped to provide for us in the long term. For society, the critical questions are: how can we allocate roles and resources in a way that improves or at least maintains our group's integrity and stability? How can we ensure that all individuals get an equal chance to contribute their talents? A society that is fair and inclusive is stronger, more stable, and better able to benefit from the full range of its members' abilities, not just those of a privileged few. Finally, for the economy, we need to ask how many and what resources are truly needed to ensure our group's survival and improve its resilience, and how must we manage those available resources to meet not only our current needs but also our future needs. By asking these questions, we move from abstract concepts to a practical framework for analysis and action across all facets of sustainability. Now that we understand the what and why of sustainable development, let's turn to the how. How can we make any resource based system more sustainable? There are three basic approaches we can take: efficiency, consistency, and sufficiency. As you can see in this diagram, these three concepts overlap, suggesting they are most powerful when used in combination. Efficiency asks, how do I minimize resource use at production and use? Consistency asks, how do I design what I need sustainably? And sufficiency asks the most fundamental question, what do I really need and why? Each of these approaches aims to achieve the same overarching goal: to reduce our total resource consumption and consequently our environmental impact. It's important to recognize that none of these approaches, when applied alone, can reduce our impact to zero. However, when we apply them together in a thoughtful and integrated way, they can significantly improve the sustainability of any system, from a single product to the entire global economy. Let's explore each one in more detail. Let's start with efficiency, which is likely the most familiar and intuitive of the three approaches. Its core question is, how do I minimize the resource use at production and use? In essence, efficiency is about doing more with less. It measures the effort and degree to which a source material is transformed into its target state. A low efficiency system requires a lot of input for very little output. Think of the energy efficiency ratings you see on appliances. That's a perfect real world example of this principle in action. For decades, corporations have favored this approach because it creates a powerful convergence of economic and environmental interests. Improving efficiency, whether in energy, materials, or time, almost always leads to lower production costs, which is good for the bottom line and good for the planet. However, we must be aware of a critical nuance: the rebound effect. Increased efficiency can lower the price of a product or service. This lower price can then lead to an increase in demand. Ultimately, this higher demand can lead to so much more production and consumption that it completely wipes out the initial resource savings. For example, if we make cars 10% more fuel efficient, but that leads to 30% more cars being sold and driven, we've actually made the overall problem worse. This teaches us a vital lesson: we must always consider total resource volumes, not just relative efficiency gains. Our second approach is consistency, which is about designing for nature's cycles. Instead of focusing on minimizing resource inputs like efficiency does, consistency focuses on the type of resources we use and how we manage them through their life cycle. The guiding question is, how do I design what I need sustainably? This approach has two main strategies. First, it aims to use infinite renewable resources whenever possible, such as wind, sunlight, and waves. There isn't less wind on the planet just because we build more wind farms. Second, when dealing with limited resources, the consistency approach strives to keep those materials in use for as long as possible by creating resource loops. This is the very foundation of what we now call the circular economy. As the diagram shows, a circular system prioritizes keeping resources at their highest value. This means that shorter loops are always better. For example, reusing a product is better than refurbishing it, and refurbishing it is better than taking it apart for recycling because each successive loop requires more energy and effort. By designing products and systems that are regenerative by nature, the consistency approach helps us move away from the linear take-make-waste model and toward one that mimics the circular waste-free systems found in nature. Our third and final approach is sufficiency. While efficiency and consistency primarily address the production side of the equation, sufficiency tackles consumption head-on. Its core idea is simple and powerful. The most effective way to reduce resource use is to reduce the demand for those resources in the first place. The central question here is a personal and societal one. What do I really need and why? There are three primary ways to practice sufficiency. The first is reduction, which is a straightforward quantitative decrease in use. For example, simply flying less often. The second is adaptation, which means supplying resources only where there is actual demand. An airline using a smaller, more appropriate plane for a flight that isn't full is practicing adaptation. The third is substitution, which involves replacing a high impact activity with a lower impact one, such as choosing to take a train instead of a plane for a journey. As simple as this concept sounds, sufficiency is often the hardest to implement because it directly contradicts the dogma of eternal growth and ever increasing consumption that has dominated our economies for decades. It challenges us to redefine progress and well being, focusing not on having more, but on having enough. We've just covered three powerful concepts for taking action: efficiency, consistency, and sufficiency. To help make these ideas more concrete, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. Think about a simple part of your daily routine, like your morning coffee. How could these three principles be applied to make that single cup of coffee more sustainable? For efficiency, you might think about the machine itself. Is it an energy efficient model that uses less electricity to heat the water? For consistency, you could consider the coffee source and packaging. Are the beans from a farm that uses regenerative organic practices? Is the packaging compostable or recyclable, designed to fit into a circular system rather than a landfill? And for sufficiency, you might ask yourself about your consumption habits. Could you reduce waste by using a reusable mug instead of a disposable one? Or perhaps it's about questioning whether you need that second or third cup. Take a moment to think through this example. Applying these big ideas to small, everyday actions is a great way to deepen your understanding and see how these principles can be put into practice everywhere. Now, let's transition from these theoretical approaches to see how the concept of sustainable development has been translated into global policy over the past few decades. The journey began in earnest in 1992 with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, held in Rio. This was a landmark event where, for the first time, climate change and the loss of biodiversity were discussed at the highest international level, bringing the concept of sustainability to a global audience. Following this, the Kyoto Protocol was established, which took a significant step forward by introducing legally binding emission reduction targets, though primarily for industrialized countries. However, the most pivotal moment in recent history came in 2015 with the Paris Agreement. This was the first truly global climate agreement that obliged all states, not just developed nations, to implement concrete measures to reduce emissions and adapt to climate change based on their unique capacities.
The key goal of the Paris Agreement is ambitious and clear: to keep the global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit that temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This agreement marked a turning point, moving sustainability from a shared idea to a collective global commitment.
The momentum from the Paris Agreement was channeled into an even broader framework adopted that same year, Agenda 2030. At the heart of this agenda are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. These goals represent our modern shared blueprint for achieving a better and more sustainable future for all people on the planet. As you can see, the 17 SDGs are comprehensive and interconnected. They go far beyond just climate action. addressing the global challenges we face across the board, including poverty, hunger, inequality, health, education, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. The SDGs were unanimously adopted by all 193 UN member states, making them a truly universal call to action.
They are designed to ensure the well being of the Earth's current and future population while protecting and preserving the natural systems upon which all life depends. The SDGs provide a detailed plan for global, national, and local action between now and the year 2030.
Achieving these ambitious goals requires more than just political will, it requires knowledge. Researchers have identified three distinct types of knowledge that are essential for driving the transformation towards sustainability. First is systems knowledge, which answers the question, what is? This is the fundamental understanding of how our environment, society, and economy work as complex, interconnected systems. We need this knowledge to grasp the root causes of our problems and the potential ripple effects of our actions. Second is target knowledge, which asks, what should be? This involves defining our goals, identifying critical thresholds or tipping points in Earth systems, and assessing risks. This knowledge is what allows us to set clear, science-based targets like the 1.5-degree goal of the Paris Agreement. Finally, and perhaps most critically today, is transformation knowledge. This answers the question, how do we get there? Despite knowing a lot about the problems and where we need to go, we are still struggling to make progress. Transformation knowledge is the practical knowledge of solutions, effective policies, innovative technologies, and institutional changes needed to bridge the gap between our current reality and our desired future. Focusing on this type of knowledge is paramount to turning our goals into reality.